Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers, friends, comrades, we want to begin this solemn occasion by asking Pandit Vishnu Pandey to invoke a prayer. Panditji.
Shall we stand, please? Om Chalanti Tara Vichalanti Mandiram Chalanti Mero Ravi Chandra Lagnakam Kadapi Kale Prithvi Chalante Chalanti Suryo न चलन्ति धर्मा करचरण कृतं व कायजं कर्मजं व श्रवणनयनजं व मानसं व पराधं विहितं व सर्वमेतत्क्षमस्व जय जय करुणाब्दे श्री महादेव शंभो जय जय करुणाब्दे श्री महादेव शंभो जय जय करुणाब्दे श्री महादेव शंभो हेम शदम परिभवग्नमश्मद्रोण थिरतास्पदम शिवभिरचनुतं शरण्यं प्रेतात्रहं प्रणतपाल भवद्दिपोतं वंदे महापुरुषते चरणारविंदम जय वंदे महापुरुषते चरणारविंदम पापुहं पापकर्माहं पापात्मा पाप शंभुव त्राहिमं पुंडरीकाक्षं सर्वपापोहरो हरे. To the wife and children and to other relatives of the late Komal Chand, I do not stand singular. I'm certain that all would like to extend heartfelt sympathy whom haven't done so and may have the opportunity at this stage. And as we know, this is a moment of sadness and grief for so many. It's a moment also whereby we can lend our support to members of the family and other close ones to the late Komal Chand. We want to give the assurance to the wife and children that we are with them at this moment of grief and sadness, and that in our prayers we ask of God to shower grace and guidance in the form of blessings, and that they can overcome this difficult moment and to move on, since life is a continual process. There's much to be said of Bhaji Komal Chand. For me personally, he was a good friend. I have known him for very long years ago, and I found him to be a wonderful person, and I'm certain that he has portrayed this all during his living moment, and especially those whom he came into contact with, those of his associates, of his close friends, and undoubtedly members of his family. Today we say together, farewell to you, our friend. Farewell to you, a dear husband. Farewell to you, a good father. And farewell to you, a good citizen of this land of Guyana and even beyond its borders. But as we know that death is inevitable, it is something that none of us can escape. In fact, in the words of the great Lord Sri Krishna, he says that whatever is born will have to die, for it is only through death there will be life again. And perhaps we can be very practical if we look at a flower tree or a fruit tree. It grows from a seed. Establishes itself well, it gives the flowers and fruits. And after a time, the fruits that fall to the ground gives birth to new plants and new trees again. And there will be a time that the one which is worn out or old will give way to the new. This is one of the cardinals, or one of the central truth of life. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita of Lord Krishna, he puts it so wonderfully that I wish to quote. And he says, Na jayate mriyate va kadachin, dayam hutva bhavita va nabhuva, ajo nityang shashvato yam purano, nahanyate hanyamane shariram. And in those words of Sanskrit, it simply means in English language, the soul is never born or dies. And today we have in front of us such an experience and such a demonstration of God's word. The body is perishable, the body goes. Chitta jala pavaka gagam shamira. The body consists of 5 elements, and very shortly as we go to the cremation site, we will see where those elements are going back to their respective place or places. Earth to earth, water to water, the air to the air, the space to the space, and the heat to the heat which will be consumed by fire. So the 5 elements goes back where it came from. What remains according to Lord Krishna, it is the Atma or the soul. It is never born, the soul never dies. It goes through a continual process. And from the Hindu viewpoint, we believe strongly that according to karma, the soul enters into bodies again, coming back into this world to make even greater contributions which are highly significant, not only to that soul in the body, but to those whom are associated. And indeed, in this case of Bhai Komalji, we know that he made a sterling contribution to the entire Guyana, a person that was loved, was admired, was respected, and will long be remembered. We close in joining prayers to the feet of the Supreme Purusha, and we ask, O God, we seek your blessings, we seek your presence to channel the Atma or the soul to its rightful place. Anadhadininu Devo, Sankhajanka Gadahara, Akshay Pundarikaksham, Preta Moksha Yadurbhava, Ram Nam Sathai, Sabka Yahi Gathai.
Thank you, Panditji. I know the relationship with you and Komal go back so long that even when you became part of the management structure of Gaisupo, you maintained that friendship and camaraderie. When I was going to school, high school that is, many moons ago, I came across a passage, Rites. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. Comrade Komal Chan obviously achieved greatness through his hard work, his commitment and dedication to his fellow human being, to Guyana, to the working class in particular. He was a true stalwart. His career, as has been printed over this period, spanned from 1975 in the sugar industry until his demise. That's a pretty long time. In the public service, after you serve 33 years, you can get your pension. Comrade Komal went way beyond that. And it wasn't merely standard hours of work. Very often, while we want an afternoon gaff, and we call for him, Incidentally, my office was right across his in High Street, Kingston. You would see his vehicle there and say, "Man, Goops, I got to complete something." And he would be there until after 6. There are, on a certain day of the week, we will meet at Nasi for this little drink. And we will call, and we have a code. The Security Council is about to meet. Your presence is required. You have the veto power. And he would say, "All right, they're coming." But that was his dedication to the job. Never had fixed hours. And you could always find him on a daily basis, like you do with other comrades in the union, way after 4, sometimes way into the evening. He was a disciplinarian, a stickler for details. If he has to deliver an address, whether Enmore Martyrs Day, May Day, or the Union General Council or conference, Komal would have his speech ready days before that. He has a few trusted colleagues that he would want to run it past. Comrade Feroz, I know, is one. And when that was done, we will meet, and he will go very often. If it's at one of these public functions, we will go and hear him. He never liked to leave any detail out, and always want to cover the issue properly. That was his discipline. To the younger trade union colleagues and managers coming up, if you emulate Komal's discipline and work ethics, Guyana will be a proud place. It is because of his dedication long before now he was recognized for his hard work and was awarded the Cacique Crown of Honor. I think it was in 1994 or thereabout. He received it with another distinguished trade unionist of our time then, Brother Gordon Todd. We all struggled together. When oppression was hitting this land in the 70s, 2 unions started to band themselves together to work to bring about a change. Those 2 unions were GAU and Nasi. And with Ram Karan, Bortis Bangri, myself, Sipal were to join later. We struggled and we worked and we said we have to build alliances. And Komal was very instrumental in getting the UGW, that's the University Workers Union, and the CCW to team up with us. And so we formed the 4 Union movement. Subsequent to that, we started to build solidarity. And we had a massive breakthrough when we built solidarity between sugar workers and bauxite workers. And we got the bauxite unions and their leaders, especially the shop stewards in the bauxite industry, involved, to the extent that by 1984, we were able to, with the support of the Public Service Union by then, we were able to take control of the TUC to charter a way forward for the workers of this country. Komal in all of this was very, very instrumental. We worked tirelessly and we gave leadership to that group by issuing press statements and everything, statements which he would be very careful about to ensure details aren't missed and to ensure that there aren't controversies, because we want to build a movement, we wanted to build unity and solidarity, and we didn't want to offend our colleagues whom we were working with. So we had to be very careful. But it was because of his charm, his intellect, understanding issues, that the working class movement moved from strength to strength. From what it was in the 70s to the 80s, united once more and strong. And then unfortunately, we have not been able to continue that unity because politics got into the way and the movement remain a segregated body today. If there is one thing that Comrade Komal Chan dreamed of, is unity of the working people. And if we can continue to pursue that goal of unity, we would indeed make him the happiest person. It would be an accomplishment that eluded him, but it is a distinct possibility given what is happening today in our country. We need that unity more than ever. Workers are reeling, and Comrade Komal would want me to say that had he been around, he would have been giving solidarity to all the workers who have been retrenched, as he did to the sugar workers, the thousands who lost their jobs just before he became ill. It was the most unconscionable act that has ever been perpetrated in this country by reckless employers. Sugar workers in those numbers should not have lost their jobs, their families. That was followed by bauxite workers, followed by mining workers. Laborers all over this country are reeling. And Comrade Komal Chan would have lent his voice loud and clear in no ordinary manner. I'm indeed happy that in all of this, Gao stood out as a bulwark in the struggle of the workers, and he would be proud of his union and the leaders he left behind, in Comrade Sipal, Narayan, and Comrade Aslim in particular. They have been a tower of strength in all of this. So he would be happy. Komal, your union is in great hands, my brother. They will rally. They will ensure solidarity is given to every worker. And they will fight the cause genuinely as you would want them, as Chedi Jagan wanted you to continue and wanted to do for the workers. We pay tribute to you today, great son, brother, comrade, one who achieved great heights but was very, very simple. One who anyone could approach, and he was never too busy to listen to them. Wherever he was, he paid attention to comrades. The country is much poorer. When leaders like you go, we take years to create another one. Recently, we lost another great brother of yours, Feroz Mohammed. I know he was your mentor. I know he was the person you always pass your notes to ensure that you had this ideological peace inside. Committed working class, you are, brother, and we salute you, we pay tribute to you. We know since your passing, it was a hard time. For your wife in particular, Your beloved wife stood by your side, but unfortunately, she told me she didn't have the chance because of COVID to see you that much. But your son at this end and your wife over in Cuba endured quite a lot because of the pandemic. It is not something, a suffering that we want to see any family go through. Your son explored every possibility of getting your body back here early and to get his mom at least some comfort. He was more concerned with her. All the options. And I want to thank comrades from Gao, Comrade Donald Ramatar in particular, who together we went to the Cuban embassy and we started to explore possibilities of getting an early flight, but the pandemic was so great. Airports were locked all around. But Komal's name was so big that he had the involvement of many, many distinguished leaders of the Caribbean. Among them would have been Chester Humphrey in particular. Senator Chester Humphrey from Grenada was calling me almost daily. Prime Minister Ralph Gonzalez was talking to Prime Minister Raul in Trinidad to see whether and how fast we could get a flight out. And when the airports and the health authorities would have allowed it. Minister Rohan Sinanan, who's a personal friend of mine and he's responsible for the airline in Trinidad, was also in contact with us. And he put us on to the chairman of Caribbean Airlines, for which all the
condolences to the wife and the family of the late Comrade Komal, and I know it is not going to be easy for them. They went through some trying times because we all know that he died since the 8th of April, and his body was left in Cuba. It was only a couple of days they were able to bring him back home. And so I know the family went through quite a number of sufferings in terms of making arrangements to have the body come here for its final rites. And so I want to say that we know that he is in a better place, and we wish that his soul find a resting place. I thank you.
Thank you. The next person will be a young, energetic trade unionist, Comrade Carville Duncan, the president of FITUG. Comrade Komal would have liked me to say FITUG, the fighting name, Federation of Independent Trade Unions of Guyana. I bring to the microphone Comrade Carville Duncan.
When I had to pay tribute to Komal. But nevertheless, it is written somewhere that only the good die young. Komal was a good man. And on behalf of the Federation of Independent Trade Union, which comprises GAO, the CCW, and the Guyana Labor Union, Komal was one of the founders of the Federation of Independent Trade Union. I can recall sometime in 1988, and to be exact, I think it was in September, that there was a conference at the Guyana Trade Union Council. And during that Congress, there was some discussions with delegates, and the Public Service Union was not happy with the decision taken. And they walked out of the Congress. Having walked out, GAO walked out after, the CCW walked out, the bauxite unions walked out. And that, to my mind, gave birth to the Federation of Independent Trade Union. Because it is after that walkout that we believe the conclusion was drawn that we need to form an organization that will look after the interests of our members. And Komal was one of those who always believed that if the trade union movement is divided, the only person suffer is the workers. So as a result of that decision, the Federation of Independent Trade Union start its activities as a union, a federation rather, headed by George Daniels, and a lot of work was done. But notwithstanding the separation, Komal was constantly in touch with Joseph Polidor, who was then the General Secretary of the TUC. And Komal thought was, as was alluded to earlier, he don't believe it is right for us to be divided. We must be united. So having had discussions with Polidor, it was finally agreed that FITEG will come back to the TUC, providing certain conditions were met. Because our concern was that leadership of the TUC only went into one direction. And even though GABU, for example, was the largest union in the TUC, they have never given him an opportunity to head the TUC. So having had those discussions, Fadi said, okay, God, you will come back, and these would be the conditions under which you will come back. And we all agreed. And at that time, Komal had just become president. And having gone back into the TUC, we discovered that there were some persons who were manipulated by the then administration, thought it best not to have a united trade union movement. So we left again. And in 2003, FITEG decided that, like Trinidad, we can have two national bodies looking after the interests of the workers. And so in 2003, FITEG was resuscitated, and Komal then became the vice president of FITEG. Komal concerned, notwithstanding his love for the workers, but he always believed that the workers ought to be an educated group, because through education, we can change the minds of those who opposed us. And he agitated vigorously in the Federation that we should start having trade union educational programs, which we did. Comrades, Komal was my personal friend. Even though I joined the trade union movement before him in 1975, don't judge me by my look. Looks are sometimes very deceiving. We used to chat very frequent, and we chat before meetings, and we chat after meetings. And we sit as we chat, we discuss issues, and we plan strategies for the development of the movement. I can recall when myself and Komal went to China, I had to play sleep on him, because throughout the flight from New York to China, all he was saying to me, we have to plan a strategy when we meet with the Chinese trade unions so that FITEG can benefit from this venture. Komal Fitag is strong now, but it would have been stronger if you were around. But even though you're not here physically, we are strongly of the view that spiritually you are with us. To his wife, children, and other families, on behalf of the Federation of Independent Trade Union, let me extend condolences. But let me say this also, you are not alone. Komal often said that if a union is in distress, GAWU is in distress. And we ought to take up that mantle as a federation. So, even though Komal would have passed away, we are always there. And you can always call on us. May his soul rest in peace.
Thank you, Comrade Carville. I now call on Comrade Dharam Kumar Siraj, the General Secretary of the Rice Producers Association. Comrade Siraj has been a long-standing friend and colleague of Comrade Komal Chan. I bring the microphone to you.
A comrade, a friend, a brother, an advisor, a fatherly figure, and of course, a father, a husband, an uncle, a grandfather, all of these things and many more, Komal Chan. The wife, Rosalind, the children, siblings, other relatives, friends, comrades all, on this solemn occasion, I bid you a pleasant good morning and namaste, assalamu alaikum, as we gather here today to pay our last respect to Comrade Komal Chan, who walked this earth for over 7 decades. And I agree with Comrade Carville that the good ones go young. Myself, him and others will be around for quite a while. But Comrade Komal, in the course of his life, would have impacted on the lives of thousands of others, especially in the agriculture sector, not restricted to sugar, but sugar in particular. And he would have left his mark on the trade union movement in Guyana, in the region and further afield. And this is testimony to his passion for the development of working people, of the peasantry also, and in this regard we shared a particularly good relationship, one which did not start it out that well, because over 3 decades ago, when I first met Comrade Komal Chan at Gimpex building, and I joined the Rice Producers Association, we were neighbors. But some of the very things that make Komal a distinguished human being, and saw him receiving, I think, our 3rd highest award, that is the Kasi Crown of Honor, would have also made life a little bit uncomfortable for some of us. And I recall fondly now, and sometimes I smile at the memory, but back then not so fondly, because one of the traits of Comrade Komal Chan, beside his thoroughness, sometimes painstakingly so, is the fact that he was quite a disciplinarian, personally, work-wise, family-wise. And when I started courting one member of his staff, this trait of being a strict disciplinarian wasn't too much appreciated by me, because lunch is 30 minutes. And if you overstep that 30 minutes, then the person who I was courting would have endured some disciplinary measures by Comrade Komal Chan. But these are traits that set him aside. These are traits that make us all better people. And I'm very happy to stand before you, although it's a solemn occasion, but this is also an occasion to celebrate the life of Comrade Komal Chan, and to tell you that professionally with GAWU and the RPA, we in the Rice Producers Association benefited a lot from his experience. Was very happy to share a number of platforms with him as we seek to take our messages to the peasantry, the farmers, the workers throughout this country in Komal's passion to represent the working people. And in this regard, he can be considered a revolutionary because he dedicated his life to ensure that the lives of so many thousands that he represented become a better life day after day. And whilst we are gathered here today to say farewell, we must celebrate that aspect of his life where he would have impacted in a very, very positive way on the overall development of our people and our country. As a member of parliament, I benefited from his advice, and our country would have benefited tremendously from his contributions, which were always very sincere, not following any political line, but following that line to ensure he represented adequately his constituents. And whether it was the PPP in government or now we have a squatting cabal, Komal Chan, first and foremost, was a trade unionist. And sometimes governments don't see eye to eye with what he does, and he might be and would have been sympathetic to the People's Progressive Party civic administration. But that did not hinder him from championing the cause of our working people. And whilst there were very, very few occasions when that might have come and caused some issues with the governing party, especially, like I said, sometimes the PPP civic, Komal stood his ground and distinguished himself as a champion of our working people. I, today, on behalf of the Guyana Rice Producers Association, and of course, on behalf of myself, my family, all our farming population, would want to take this opportunity to pay homage, to pay respect to Comrade Komal Chan, and to further extend our sincere sympathies and condolences to Rosalind and the children. And I must say that when I was sitting there, I saw Mavendra Brado walking by with his slippers, and I saw the way his feet were in that slippers, and I said, "Ay Lord, this is Komal right here." So he is replicate. So I was very happy to be a part of this family. I was very happy. And like I said, I benefited tremendously from my association with Comrade Komal Chan. And I'm certain all of you would agree with me that he will live on. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Comrade Siraj. As Comrade Siraj mentioned, Comrade Komal Chand was a member of Parliament for a number of years, very seasoned member of Parliament, and he served up to the last day Parliament sat before it was prorogued and elections called. In that Parliament, his wife is also an employee of that Parliament, but in the Parliament, there is an affable human being, a brother, a comrade too, the clerk of the National Assembly, Comrade Sherlock Isaacs is here, and we are honored by his presence, and it shows how much Comrade Komal is revered in those halls, and I won't miss this opportunity to have Mr. Sherlock Isaacs bringing Parliament wishes to the family.
Thank you, Dr. Gopal. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the presence of former President Ramatar, I think I see him around, former ministers of the government, former members of Parliament. The staff of the Parliament and myself are completely saddened by the passing of former Member of Parliament, Mr. Komal Chand. Mr. Chand was the husband of our dear colleague, Mrs. Rukmin Chand. As Dr. Gopal said, Mrs. Chand is the staff in the Parliament office. Of course, we knew that Mr. Chand was very ill and was taken to Cuba for medical attention. We were hoping for the best. We did not realize that the hen could come possibly. We did not realize that the hen could possibly come like this and so soon. We know what a terrible loss it is for his wife, children, grieving relatives, his political party, the Ghana Agricultural Workers Union, and his friends. As clerk of the a number of years ago, Komal, as I call him, and I were part of a parliamentary delegation headed by former Speaker of the National Assembly, Ralph Rankaran, to a parliamentary conference in Fiji. Komal and I were booked to travel on the same flight from Guyana to the USA, from the USA to Australia, and so on. Somehow we missed our flight to Australia after landing in some far-out state in America, and we were required to stay in a hotel in that state from 6 a.m. that day until 8 p.m. the following day, if my memory serves me right. While I was about to book a room at the hotel, Komal said to me, "Sherlock, you save your money. I'll book a room with 2 beds, and you will stay with me." I was shocked, since no other politician had ever treated me so kindly. That was not the end of it. In the restaurant of the hotel, there were 2 types of dinner: an ordinary dinner, poor man dinner, and a buffet dinner. Komal told me to pay for the ordinary dinner, which he ate, and he paid for the buffet dinner, which I ate. And those days I had a big appetite, not like now. The same thing happened the following morning. The difference was, though, he was required to serve himself buffet style. And I had to go and my meals were brought to me. So what we did, Komal would go, and I would tell him, "Komal, like for breakfast, I want pork and ham and bacon and beef and sausages." I don't have the poor man, you see, those things, but I'll have the man fetching those things to me. And he didn't murmur, he did it without hesitation. and he would eat the few things that they had the ordinary dinner. And this lasted throughout our stay in the United States. I must say that Komal's disposition during our trip changed my view of politicians, and that is that they can be nice people. I didn't thought so before. From the time of our visit to Fiji, a cordial relationship existed between Komal and myself until the time of his death. Normally when I'm being criticized by the newspapers or when I'm in trouble, Komal would call me and say, "Sherlock, have no fear. Don't take it on. It would soon pass." I'll never forget those words. It would soon pass. Mr. Chan served the National Assembly for 25 years, 11 months, and 19 days, and participated in 32 debates. He served in the following important parliamentary committees: Economic Services Committee, the Public Accounts Committee, the Special Select Committee on the Trade Union Recognition Bill. I'm told he made a tremendous contribution to that committee. Natural Resources Committee. Mr. Chan made a tremendous contribution to the National Assembly in Guyana as a whole, having participated greatly in the debates and other proceedings of the National Assembly and its committees. He was also a good speaker, public speaker. He's also a good public speaker. And I tell you, a particular speaker and myself would sit down and discuss who were the best debaters in the National Assembly, good speakers, public speakers. And Mr. Chan, Komal Chan, was among them. You will agree with me that Mr. Chan, due to his work in the National Assembly and the trade union movement in Guyana, must be recognized as an outstanding Guyanese. From the time of our visit to Fiji, I've been calling his wife Bauj or Bauji, although she's my staff. So Bauj, which is short for Bauji, your loss of a husband is infinitely greater than our loss of a great son of Guyana soil. But you may derive some tiny grain of comfort in knowing that there are friends and colleagues who are willing to help to sustain you in your loss. The entire staff of the Parliament Office shares your loss, Bauj. On behalf of the Speaker of the National Assembly, the staff of the Parliament Office, my family, and my own behalf, I wish to extend our deepest sympathy to Kamal's sorrowing wife, Rukmin, and the rest of his family. I've been taught that in times of grief, we are comforted by the word, that which is God. May Komal's soul rest in peace. Thank you, MC.
Before I call on Comrade C. Paul Narayan, I want to acknowledge the presence of the Ambassador of Cuba, who is here with us. And we want to thank him for all that the government and people of Cuba has done for us and the brother. We were going to sing the Gau song, but Comrade Aslim told me they did that earlier. And so it is my distinct pleasure to call on another stalwart, Comrade C. Paul Narayan, General Secretary of Gau, to address us.
Master of Ceremony, respected Pandits, Commander, ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here this morning to pay homage and final respects to Comrade Komal Chan, who was the president of our union for many years. On behalf of the members of the Guyana Agricultural and General Workers Union, and on my own behalf, I extend our sincere condolences to his family, relatives, friends, and comrades. Komal Chan was a friend, a trusted advisor, and a comrade in every sense of the word. He often looked out for us, offered advice and guidance, and provided the opportunity for us to educate ourselves. For the thousands of GAU members, he was embraced as their leader, who led them to several victories as they faced many struggles. He was a skilled organizer and a fighter of formidable strengths and ability. Personally, and on behalf of GAU, I feel improve ourselves. I remember him saying to staff members, do well, so that if you have to go somewhere else, you must be better than others. Komal's life was inextricably linked to the struggle of workers in the sugar industry, who historically challenged the plutocracy, a vivid symbol of colonial oppression. That apart, I remember being side by side with him in other struggles to expand the Union into distilleries, forestry, rice, fisheries, national parks, Demerara Harbour Bridge, and the Berbice River Bridge, among other places. Komal was also a keen follower of international affairs. Through his activism in this area, he developed many close contacts and established links with comrades in several parts of the world. His internationalist outlook saw him naturally speaking on behalf of the workers of the world. He was a member of the Presidential Council of the World Federation of Trade Unions, WFTU, and from that forum advocated for improvement of workers beyond the shores of Guyana. We are well aware of his rich legacy to this nation and to the workers. However, the heart of this great man has been still. It throbs no more. We are engulfed with grief. The atmosphere is heavy with sorrow. The pain over the loss goes deep. As he departs physically from our midst, the words of Nelson Mandela appropriately comes to mind. Quote, when a man has done what he considers to be his duty to his people and his country, he can rest in peace. End of quote. Komal has done that. Farewell, Komal. Rest in peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Comrade C. Paul. Our next speaker will be Comrade James Rohi, very long-standing friend of Comrade Komal. And the last time he was here, when we were all here at the wedding, I remember Clement saying, with Feroz here, we have to meet back at Nasi to rekindle the good old days when we would reflect and plot and plan our next move in the struggle. Unfortunately, while I gave Feroz the undertaking that it will be soon, we depended on Puran to bring him over, but we were never able to concretize that meeting. Comrade Rohi has been an outstanding fighter for democracy and justice, has been a leading light in the People's Progressive Party, served as General Secretary, served in many other capacities, served in government, outstandingly in the foreign affairs domain and in home affairs. Someone whom I was personally impressed with, who others, great writers, heard his delivery on the Lomé Convention on sugar one evening and told me, this comrade has arrived, he understands what he's about. Who others, great writers, heard his delivery on the Lomé Convention on sugar one evening and told me, this comrade has arrived, he understands what he's about. who others great writers heard his delivery on the Lomé Convention on Sugar one evening and told me, this comrade has arrived, he understands what he's about. Who others great writers heard his delivery on the Lomé Convention on Sugar one evening and told me, this comrade has arrived, he understands what he's about. Who others great writers heard his delivery on the Lomé Convention on Sugar one evening and told me, this comrade has arrived, he understands what he's about.
Hold on, a little bit more.
Who others great
Hold on, maybe too much.
against him. During the PPP's tenure in office, Komal was confronted with many difficult tasks. The task of balancing industrial relations with the political, which he became very adept at doing. Sometimes those interests appeared to clash, but in the process of consultation and cooperation, those issues were amicably resolved. Komal Chan lived to see how the APNU AFC reckless, insensitive, and destructive approach to the sugar industry left thousands of sugar workers jobless and without bread on their tables. He fought this short-sighted policy to the end, yet he remained optimistic about the confidence of the sugar workers in their union. And so was Komal, the fighter and believer. He has left a lasting legacy to the union he once led and the trade union movement in this country as a whole. Rest in peace, Comrade Komal. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Rui. I also want to acknowledge in our midst Comrade Irfan Ali, the President-elect of Guyana, and we'll have him say something, but after Comrade Donald Ramatar. Comrade Ramatar has also been a long-standing friend of Comrade Komal Chan, and I want to quickly share a story with you about Comrade Komal's statement and love for Comrade Ramatar. When Chedi died and Comrade Ramatar became the General Secretary, he was very happy. And he said, you know, Gopes, I really, really love Comrade Donald. We worked together in Gao. And if there was one day we end up in a creek and 4 of us are there, and Comrade Ramatar going down, and I got to save one person, it will be Comrade Donald. So much he loved him. And that love and affection remained to his last day. When he was leaving the morning to Cuba, he called me and he said he was going. Tell Comrade Donald he didn't get to talk to him today, but he's going to see us back. When word got around of his passing, Comrade Donald called and we started to work together to see how fast we could get the body back, and he played an integral role. Komal would have been happy of his involvement from then to now. And so, Comrade Ramatar, we want to thank you and call you to the microphone.
Thank you, Masters of Ceremonies. Allow me, first of all, to extend deepest sympathy to Rosalind, to the children, grandchildren, the brothers and sisters, to the leadership and membership of the GAU, to Comrade Komal friends in the PPP. Allow me also to extend, as Comrade Gopal mentioned just now, we work very closely with the Cuban ambassador, and he's here with us today, and I'm happy he's here so that we can extend our thanks to him for the efforts that he made to help Comrade Komal to try to get back his health. The last time I spoke or had contact with Komal Chan was on the 18th of February. He sent a text to me to say that he had an offer from the Cuban comrades to go to Cuba to try to regain his health. And he would be away for 3 weeks. I think he was asking me about it because it meant that he would have been away during elections time. And I told him, Comrade, you have to go. because for more than a year, I was concerned about his health. I know he spent some time in Florida trying to get better. And I was shocked when I came here on New Year's Day, the beginning of this year, to spend some time with him, me and a few other comrades, to see how much weight he had lost and how thin he had become. So I was concerned about him, and I told him, you have to go. And then he went, and the rest of it is history. And that was the last contact I had from more than 50 years of conversation and relations with Comrade Komal Chan. I don't remember exactly when we first met. It was in the mid-60s, and I used to see him at Freedom House, and we see him at PPP activities. But the first time when I began to get close to him was when, probably in 1967, I came here to this house in the company of Comrade Narbada Prasad, Feroz Mohammed, and another stalwart who was with us, Comrade Hari Narayan Daubat, known as Rani. And that is when we started to get close. Komal was already then a stalwart of the party. He worked together with his brother Dal Chan in the 1961 elections with Fenton Ramsahoy. He had very close relationship with E.M.G. Wilson, and he actually told me that he learned a lot of organizational skills from Comrade Wilson, who he regarded as one of the best organizers that he had worked with. He had good relationship with, and a lot of jokes too, with Comrade Pariag Sukai. Once he told me that we went to a house doing party work, a lady's house. She was living alone. And then when she saw the lady had a little pussycat and jumping on Pariag's lap. So that shows you the kind of relations that Pariag, the extracurricular activities that Pariag had. But those are some of the things, and then we became closer and closer. We got extremely close when we went to Moscow together in 1972. He was there from 71, I went there from 1972. And we became very close friends. And we had some adventures together, some of which he never stopped reminding me of. I got in trouble with some students from the Arab world, and we had a little bit of problems, and some negotiation had to take place, and we wanted it to take place without the glare of the authority of the school or without the rest of our group knowing about what happened and who I took with me to represent me, Komal Chan. And he never allowed me to forget that. He always says to me that he was my distinguished counsel. So I always remember those days, and we always had a lot. As the comrade said, he was a very disciplined man. When I knew him, hardly anything was out of place. The two of us were kind of opposites in that regard. Hardly anything was out of place with Komal. He was always neatly dressed, short in his pants, tidy, not a hair out of place. And I always, I didn't pay much attention to some of those things. And then the comrade said he was a man of looking at good details on these matters. But we got very close friends then. And when we came back to Guyana, it was just on the eve of the 1973 elections, and we even worked even closer with each other. As I said at the beginning, he had already accumulated a lot of experience. He was in the steering committee to reform the PYO in the 1960s after it had been defunct with Moses Bagwan after the 1964 elections. And he was there together with Comrade Naubat and very few other comrades around at that time. So he already had a strong reputation as a strong party man and a man to get in touch with on the West Bank whenever you're coming in this direction. The comrades mentioned all the people that he worked very closely with. And then when he came back, he had other positions too. His internationalism, his strong, deep Marxist conviction, his fundamental socialism, and he wanted to spread that as much as possible. And it was only natural that he became the head of the Guyana Soviet Friendship Society, an organization that he led for many, many years. And I had the opportunity of working with him in that organization as well. And as he always, his activities always came off with a bang. And then, after the 1973 elections, in the next year, Komal was, even before the GAU was recognized, he was involved deeply in the strike for recognition, the 1975 strike, the only strike in the world that I ever heard. Cherry Jagan adjourned the strike to come back the next year with another big strike that eventually led to recognition, that eventually led to the government giving the pole. On that day, I never forgot, it was All Year's Day in 1975, and I spent the whole day on this West Bank in the company of Comrade Komal Chan as we campaigned in Wales for the GAU. And after that, after recognition, his name is signed on the recognition agreement in February of 1976, and then he moved shortly thereafter to the 1977 major strike, 135-day strike, which was a strike to try to defend not only industrial democracy, but to defend agreements. The GAU had an agreement with Gaisuko to pay increase in wages when the government decided that they will reverse that decision. And that forced the union into a strike that lasted for 135 days. And it was a very difficult one because you had to feed workers and keep them going for that length of time. But that is another area that we work closely together with. I work closely together with him. When I came back from my stint in Europe in the 1980s, I began working at the GAU, and by then he was already the leader and the head of the union. And I worked there together with him and Comrade Narain and other comrades, Ulrich Ramana, Mitulal Mangal, and other comrades. We worked there together for 5 years before I left and went back to the party's office. And Rohi and I always, whenever we refer to Komal activities, we always talk about Henry. Always call him Henry, because we had nicknamed him Kissinger because of his love for international affairs and his negotiating skills. And I saw some of his negotiation skills close up. Having been with many GAU delegations in the 5 years that I was in the union, to him it was a joy, or I don't know if it's a real, looking back now, it was nice and a good experience. But then sometimes it could have been torture, to hear Komal Chan and DP Sankar negotiating. DP Sankar, every word DP Sankar talked, he paused for 5 minutes before he mentioned the other word. And Komal matched him toe to toe. So sometimes he had agony to listen to some of those negotiations, those tough negotiations that went on at the Gaisubu area. But those were 5 years, and after I went to the party's office, we still continued our contact and our regular contact. Comrade Komal was instrumental too. Another strike that I want to recall, that I remember very clearly, was the 1989 strike. And I remember the day that he arrived at the office. When he came over from here, he went to the office to work. And immediately he told us, as he came there, that he saw workers from the bridge walking off the job. And then I knew immediately that this is going to be a big strike. And that 1989 strike was a tough one, a difficult one. But Komal not only led the sugar workers and kept them going, but he was also instrumental in going to Linden to save some of the bauxite trade unionists from getting beat up when the strike was about to be called off. But because of his stature and the integrity that he had, and the trust that he built, people trusted him and went along with what he said. Apart from the fact of his trade union and political activity, he was very multi-talented. I said that when I knew him first, he was a mechanic. And he was not just an ordinary mechanic. He studied it, he did a course, he bought books, and he studied the theory and practice of mechanical engineering. And I believe that if he wasn't, like many of us, trapped into the political arena, he would have had a thriving mechanical workshop here and keep it going. He was very industrious. You never came here and Komal was doing nothing. The only time I came here and saw Komal in the house was old New Year's Day of this year. Otherwise, he had some cows. He used the cows and he had his own biogas. And he was always engaged in some type of activity. He and I also traveled together with Colonel Janet Jagan in 1996 when we went to China to see the miracle that is the People's Republic of China, the tremendous development that has been and is taking place in that country. And I think both of us were thrilled to see how a socialist country was developing and has now come to be the number 2 economic power in the world. And everyone agrees that very soon it is going to be the number 1 country in the world. And that is practically part of the reason that you have so much of tension now with the West and China, because there is a great attempt to retard the growth of the People's Republic of China. Comrades, I have had many, many friends in my lifetime. Some have proven not to be so great friends, but many have been proven to be wonderful people. And among those genuine comrades and friends that I will always hold closest to my heart is Comrade Komal Chan. Not that we didn't have a great disagreement. We had a lot of disagreements, particularly when I was president and he was calling strikes. And I was telling him sometimes that you have to realize that the interest of the working class is not only calling strikes for more money, but there were more important things sometimes that the workers would need. But despite whatever differences we had at that level, it never ever affected our personal relationship. I felt that he was one of the most reliable persons. He was one of the most confidential people. In fact, he was so confidential to a fault. He was so private. Sometimes you didn't know where the shoes was pinching his foot, because there are many things he never talked about in his lifetime. I believe that all of us who knew him, who worked with him, who loved him, who supported him, can be consoled by the fact that he lived a life of service, that he gave whatever faults he would have, and he's not without faults. He's a very difficult man sometimes when you're at the meetings to deal with him. As Narayan said, sometimes he could be even very harsh at meetings. He was a human being. But he was a man that gave his whole life. He didn't come exactly from the working class. Komal might have been far better off financially if he didn't go into the union. But he chose to go in that direction and to make a contribution. He had friends from all walks of life. He recruited. He had a very good friend. He has a very good friend that is here today, Komal Puran, who was his close associate, Fazal. And after Fazal passed, Puran was adopted in Fazal's place. So he was a wonderful comrade, a man that gave his all, a man that gave tremendous service to the people of this country. I feel very fortunate today that I have had the opportunity to work so closely with him, to share not only the work and the problems, but also to share some joys.